Welcome, everyone. We're going to be talking about how to work out smarter by actually understanding how to master the system that actually runs your show. You see, in the fitness world, a lot of people obsess over the gear, their supplements, the grind, the discipline, the different programs, all those different types of things. But in the world of high performance neurology, we know that your muscles are just, for lack of a better term, dumb tissue. They only do what they're told. They follow what you give the commands to it. If the signal from your brain is weak, your workouts are going to be weak. Neurology is everything. If you don't have proper nerve flowing to the muscles, you can't grow muscles. And so today we're going to get into something called the neurotonal reset, and how you can really upgrade your internal software for 2026. How this is going to level up you in your workouts, in your life, in performance. And we're going to talk about why this relates to longevity. If you've been struggling to hit certain marks, this is, even if you are an athlete, or let's say you do something as on the far end of being in CrossFit, you will see, and I'm going to share why I have worked with many array of individuals in the last 15 to 16 years and be able to show how this works. And I'll even share some personal stories of myself being an athlete, of what utilizing and doing these kind of processes, what has done for me. And we're going to tie in what that means for you and so much more. So let's dive in. So a lot of times when we look at working out, what's really helping you in the process, right? So the stat here says 70% impact on exercise for well-being, right? And so they found that the research shows that if you regularly exercise, this will contribute to a significant 70% increase in overall well-being, mental clarity, and it basically highlights the importance of how fitness is an investment for your health and future. Right, when we look at health, we really have to understand, and it's sad. I see a trend in today's world where a lot of holistic practitioners, functional medicine docs, and so much more, they do great work. I'm not bashing it, but a lot of times they're very medical in what they're doing. Oh, you have this problem, we need to give you this to solve that. You have this thing, we're going to do this to do that. That's not really health. That's not vitality. That's not. There's two mechanisms of allopathic, which is medical, and then there's vitalism, which is holistic. And a lot of people in the holistic world are actually more medical and they don't realize it, because what we've done is we've transferred from meds to supplements. And what really we want to look at, if it's true vitalism, which means we look at the overall part of health, which is a lifestyle. It's not like, oh, you just need this for this short period of time and that's it. No, it's a lifestyle. It's neurology. If you're not working on something with your health, like say, for example, brushing your teeth, if you stop doing that, your dental health is going to decline. I'm sorry. If you're going to, these are just the laws, right? So if you're going to go ahead and work out and you stop working out, what's going to happen to your muscles? They're going to atrophy eventually over time. What you don't use, you lose. And so this is the process of health. This is vitalism. Now, exercise falls into this because it's an investment. Everything you do in today when you work out is actually a benefit for you in the long term. I always tell people that's an alignment to vitality, because whatever you do today, whether it's working out, making sure you take a good nutrition, and we'll get into some other things like neurology, this is going to help set up long-term success. This is vitalism, because it's not just something you're going to do. I, for example, myself, I've been working out since I was 13 years old. I work out not because I want to be in shape. I don't work out because of those things. I work out because I want to keep my body to be able to handle the stresses of life. I call it sharpening the knives. And when I can do those things, it helps me. But more importantly, I also have kids. I want to experience my grandkids. So every workout I do now, I know is expanding my life and longevity. I'm going to share with you what's the research on that to hopefully inspire you to focus on this a little bit more. Okay. Because what happens is if we just, when we're looking at working out, right, we're talking about focusing on things. Most of us treat exercise like a bank account. We think that if we're just depositing sweat, we're going to get wealthy in health, right? But what if your account had hidden leaks? What if there's something there? You got to realize exercise is a physiological stressor. It stresses the body. In a healthy body, that stress triggers growth. When you have good neurology, all in balance, it's going to trigger growth. But in 2026, most of us are already redlining from work, from kids, the digital overload, and so much more. In the chiropractic world, we call this allostatic load. If your baseline stress is too high, a hard workout doesn't build muscle. I want you to understand that. If you are very stressed out, burnt out, and those kind of things, and you're doing some very intense extreme workouts, it will not help you build muscle. It's actually going to trigger more inflammation and start to increase more muscle wasting. You are trying to drag race a car that has a check engine light on, right? It's eventually just going to burn. And this is called the hormetic zone. So exercise is what we call hormetic, which is known as a beneficial stress. Okay, so it's only if the nervous system has the capacity to recover. If you're stuck or sympathetic dominance, what ends up happening is your body will stay more in a catabolic state, and it keeps what that means is just going to break things down more, and so you're not in a growth and building state. And so if you're tired but wired, your workout is a withdrawal. It's not a deposit. You're not adding to your health. You're retracting from it, or reducing it, subtracting from it. And so that's where these concepts comes of understanding where are you at neurologically? How are you at from a stress response? Are you feeling burnt out? Are you tired? Are you exhausted? These are things to be aware of. It doesn't mean you don't work out. There's a whole thing we're going to get into, but it's just understanding the process behind that to know what to do and what to do in that process. And that's why you're here, and I'm excited to get you here. So let's talk about a little something called the crack in foundation. So in chiropractic, we know that structure determines function. The structure of things will always determine the function. It's been seen for the last 100 and some odd years, and we understand that. We also understand that structure governs function in the sense of the foundation of performance. Okay, structural integrity is essential if you want to have optimal function. Instability inhibits performance. I want you to be very clear on that. And this is on every facet of your life, highlighting the importance of like a strong foundation for your physical health and overall well-being. This will play in mental health and so much more. I want you to understand that imagine you're building $1 million custom home on a foundation that's sinking on one side. I do not care how expensive the windows are and the brand and all the things they said about it. They're eventually going to crack. I don't care what exotic wood you put in those doors. Eventually those doors aren't going to be closing properly anymore, or they're going to swing open and things like that. You're going to have issues showing up because the foundation isn't solid. So the foundation, when we look at things, is your spine. If your structure shifted just even slightly, your brain picks up and thinks instability. And to keep you safe, it locks down the surrounding muscles. This is why your hamstrings or traps will always feel tight. It's not a muscle problem, it's a neurological safety. It's like your brain literally pulling the handbrake on things. It's like literally saying, hey, stop, we need to do this just because we want to prevent a crash. And we all have this. So there's some science behind this. So Arndt-Schultz law, this is where it comes from. It states that for every stimulus, there's an equal physiological response. If the stimulus is instability, what we call in chiropractic subluxation or miscommunication, the response is going to be inhibition or weakness. And so your brain would rather have you be tight and safe than flexible and injured. I want you to be very clear with that. And this is why chiropractic will play such a huge role. We're going to get into these things a lot deeper. Because I want you to understand that your nervous system is the master control system. It does control pretty much everything. Okay. So research here shows 90% of bodily functions are influenced by the nervous system, emphasizing its role as the master controller of our physical and mental performance. Pretty important here. So I want to really share this with you and really hammer this, that you don't have a nervous system. You are a nervous system. You experience life through your nervous system. Everything happens because of that. So we spend a lot of time talking about back pain and people want to think chiropractic's all that, but I want you to understand that chiropractic is focusing on the master control over your entire human experience. every single facet, how you think, what you put your attention to, all this different stuff is going to play a huge role in that. See, because your nervous system is the commander in chief. If it tells your heart when to beat, your lungs when to breathe, and your muscles when to fire, if the master controller is glitchy in any way, shape, or form, every other system, your hormones, your digestive, your strength will glitch too. It's impossible not to, you can't, this is like, again, I tell people all the time, this is the law of neurology. We can't override that. So we aren't just adjusting when we're working on bones or looking at the spine, we're actually upgrading the human operations system for 2026. Every time you get it, someone gets an adjustment. Every time someone gets an adjustment from a wellness perspective weekly, you are upgrading and optimizing as much as you possibly can at that moment, in that time, to adapt to the stressors and everything that you're dealing with to thrive as best as possible, humanely possible that you can. And so there's some science to tie into this. We have something called the autonomic nervous system. This is the nervous system that runs on its own. It governs everything involuntary. Chiropractic has been known, and still to this day, the number one thing out of anything alternative medicine. I only like using that term medicine on there, to show that we have the long-term effect when it comes to this autonomic nervous system, shifting it and helping improve it. So we can shift a lot from sympathetic, which is known as the stress response, the breakdown effects. That's that catabolic response. And we shift it to parasympathetic, which we call brake pedal, which is the growth in development, growth and repair. It's known as anabolic, right? So anabolic is a term that means growth, where catabolic is breaking down. And it happens pretty much instantly almost. So this is when you're just getting one adjustment. And this is what we're trying to do to maintain the nervous system and the brain and so much more to stay in that healing state and to continue in that process. So I want you to be really clear here. When it comes to fitness, when it comes to anything, the limit of your health is the limit of your nervous system's clarity. I want to be really clear with that. If you don't have proper clarity, this is going to create a role in things. As a business coach, I work with a lot of people on vision, and we get into the mind stuff and vision and what is that aspect. And when it's not happening for my clients that I'm working with, I always go back and say, well, one, we got to make sure you have a clear vision. How much clarity do you have with it? How well you can define it? How much is, because I'm telling them, if you can't be clear and you can't see it clearly, you cannot experience that in your life. It just will not happen. Because it's not how neuroscience, quantum physics, and all these things work. There's certain laws that are governed, and I call it the rules to life. Life is a game, and there's rules to this life. And I believe that through my own experiences and the sciences I've studied and all these different things, that there are certain processes to that. And I saw this early on in chiropractic school when I started learning neuroscience. I started learning neurology. There are certain laws that govern it. There's actually quantum aspects that they've learned through quantum physics tying into neuroscience to actually support those laws. And so, again, the limit of your health is the limit of your nervous system's clarity. So let's talk about static versus signal, understanding the two, okay? So a neurostatic, this is the anatomy of a glitch. So think about the last time you were on a phone call with a bad connection. You could hear every third word. Isn't that exhausting? I know it is for me. Here's the thing though. When your spine loses proper alignment or movement, it creates neurostatic, which comes from, in chiropractic, we call it the subluxation, which is a miscommunication. The fancy word for this is nociception. But the static blurs the brain's map of your body. Brain says, fire the glutes. But because of the static, only 40% of the fibers hear the command. You're working twice as hard for half the results. Now, if you're a patient of mine, see, you experience this as an adult at least. You experience this when I ask you to raise one leg versus the other. This is one of the things we're looking at. How well is the nerves firing and communicating to that area? We make an adjustment, the patient go ahead and you redo that test, and your legs are firing equally. This is the exact thing what we're talking about here. So we're dialing in to get that signal to be crystal clear for this area. So there's some science. I always like to bring science to the table. So there's something called afferent disafferentation. Okay. Now these are fancy terms. These are neurological terms. Afferent means signals going to the brain. It's your sensory input. Disafferentation means miscommunication. In other words, it's not firing or getting there properly. So it means garbage in, garbage out. If the brain receives poor sensory input from the spine, what's going to happen is it's going to produce poor motor output. You get weakness, clumsiness, poor coordination. These are just a few things. This plays a lot of roles if you like to play sports. If you have kids who are athletes, this is critical. This is helping them keep alignment, symmetry, keeping the good input, good and bad, good input, good output, which is going to then prevent wear and tear down the long term. Again, long-term success. It prevents wear and tear, and it helps increase performance, recovery, and so much more. We're going to talk a lot about that later here. So the one thing I always like to hammer on when you think about chiropractic, it's not about the back. It's the signals, clearing signals so the brain can see your body again. It can see it more clearer. It can get the proper response and so much more. Okay, I'm going to get into this a little deeper now because I want to talk about strength and if you're a CrossFitter or you like to get, if you work out a lot, I'm going to share about personal records, PRs, and these kind of things and how this all happens, right? So we know 100% for a fact that strength is a brain skill. It's not just a muscle size. Right? There's a lot that comes on to this when it comes to more about the brain and the neurology behind it and so much more. Because here's an example. Why can a 150-pound gymnast be stronger than a 200-pound bodybuilder, right? When I was growing up, my dad, he had a couple jobs, and one of them he had a carpet job that he did. It was his business on the side while he worked full time. And we worked with carpet, and he used to call me Muscles, and I'd be the guy that comes in and just lifts things. And what was interesting is my dad was in his like 50s, and at that time I was in my 20s, and he'll be like, "Hey, I got a big job. I need some help. We got to move some carpet, and I got to get supplies up a couple flights of stairs. You can get a friend." I was like, "Okay, fine. I'll call one of my buddies. We're gonna go, or I get my cousin, whatever that is." And my dad loved this. This fed his ego so much. So my dad, old school guy, and he would. So we're moving this up this year. And I've been doing this a while, so he never taught me this. I just learned over time this whole gymnast thing, because it's like I had to learn how to move my body in different ways and use my body instead of just using my muscles to be more effective in things. Because my dad would be like not out of breath as much, and we'd be like sweating, exhausted. A friend who never does this, or a buddy of mine or cousin never does this, they're dying. And he always look and go, what's going on here? And this is a little different than what I'm trying to share here, but it's just the aspect of understanding that you can have big muscles, but there's something else to it. In other words, right? In this case, my dad was using his body and using weight and all these different things, but he was also a gymnast too, and back in the day. But here's the thing: the point is what I'm trying to share is I work out consistently. I worked all the muscles, and I did full bodies. I did all this, and yet I couldn't lift and move the carpet as well as my dad did. What it was the volume of the brain's signal, right? So what happens is the strength is about a motor unit recruitment. Your brain sends electrical pulses to your muscles. The faster and louder that pulse is, the more strength you produce. Does that make sense? So the faster you can get there and the more sound that comes from that, let's just say, electrical charge, you're going to create more strength. And so what research shows through is that chiropractic adjustments actually increase the drive from the brain to the limbs. And what we're literally doing is we're literally turning up the volume on your strength, okay? So coming back to my whole dad story is that he had different muscular fibers. He worked more neurologically on his muscle fibers, and so he fired them up differently, which didn't fatigue him, and he was very strong for what he could do, if that makes sense. So what I was doing back then, especially once I got into chiropractic school, I started learning about neurological toning into the body and changing my muscle fibers around and trying to get more fibers. In order to do that, I needed more nerves to fire in that area, which changed everything. So the long story short then is, we know for a fact that chiropractic care will help turn up the volume to your strength. There was research code, it's called rate coding, and this was referring to the frequency of neural impulses. So there was a study done in 2019 by Marhc and her associates, and what happened was they showed that a 24.8% increase in muscle force following an adjustment due to improved neural drive. Let me say that again. One adjustment, they saw a 24.8% increase in muscle force. Isn't that crazy? That's significant. If I lift 100 pounds, I can get adjustment, go lift, and I'll put up 125. It's huge. And this is what became a game changer. And I saw this in my own life with my own friends because I had a buddy of mine who's like, you think, again, most people think chiropractic is just back pain, neck pain, and headaches. And it was one of my best friends. And I kept telling him, you need to go see a chiropractor. I'm telling you, go see the one I was seeing. This one I was in my early 20s. I said, I've never seen my strength go up like crazy. Now, just for reference, I was playing rugby for Arizona State in 19, 20 years old. I put up weight that I was able to bench double my weight. I put up all this strength. It was amazing. I never experienced this much strength. Now, I had a lot of strength in high school. I used to, I put up really high numbers for a kid that for my age. But when I got to college, what was different was, especially in when I turned 20, I was already under chiropractic care for almost about 5-6 months. And my workouts were just getting more and more, and like I can push more weight without even trying. I was hitting more PRs. I was doing all these different things. I had a friend of mine who owned a couple of CrossFit gyms. He's been working out just as long as I have. We started working out around 12, 13, 14 years old. But long story short, he had the same experience. He came to me because he kept hearing about chiropractic, and there was someone very big in the CrossFit world who talked about how he has a chiropractor actually out of his gym, and he's like one of the world's Rich Froning, I think his name was, and he won like 4 CrossFit competitions in a row, and he stopped because it was just too easy. And he talked about how chiropractic was a huge component to that. My friend heard that. He thought of me. He says, how can we make this happen? I said, well, come in, let's get you adjusted. Long story short, he's been working out now doing CrossFit for like 9-10 years. He hasn't hit a PR in a couple of years. Within 8 months, he hit 7, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 6 or 7 PRs. He couldn't understand how this was happening. So you got to understand, everything's neurology at the end of the day. An adjustment is the power boost for your motor neurons. It will take things to a whole nother level, and it opens up that door. And this is where, if you think about it, you're just living life. If you just want to have more longevity, we're going to talk about longevity. I'm not sharing it now. I'm going to come back to this, and I'm going to come back about muscles and what does it actually mean for your longevity and your health. But this is just the starting point of it all. A lot of times we get into next step here is going to be about fat loss. And I want you to understand that you can't threaten your body into losing weight. You can force your body, but it's going to come back. People do weight loss programs, they lose weight, and it just comes all right back, right? You do this detox program, you're forcing your body to fast, you're doing all these different things, and then it just comes back. You get stuck back in old routines, things just come back, and you start doing that. Just like working out, you can stress the body. I did this, never do 5-6 years of doing things, fasting and all these different things, different diets, different programs, different exercise programs, and so much more. And I didn't realize that I was actually stressing my body more, and it was making it harder for it to change. And I realized I wasn't getting in the shape I wanted to be in. So most people will try to beat their body into fat loss with more cardio, they eat less. But if your brain feels unsafe, it'll fight you on every step. I want you to be very clear with that. It's going to fight you because your brain's all about safety and keeping you safe and comfort and predictability, okay? So fat is survival fuel. I want you to understand that. If your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, if you're sympathetic dominant, what we call stuck in gas pedal mode, your brain thinks there's a tiger in the room. And in a war zone, the body will hoard fat and burn muscle for quick energy. That's what it's going to do. Everything is about energy efficiency, how to keep moving forward. To burn fat effectively, we have to flip the switch to safety. Only in a safe state will the brain allow the body to release stored fuel. I want to be very clear with that. So if you've looked at yourself and you've been trying to figure things out from weight, or you've had ups and downs, yo-yos, all these different things, you got to go neurological first. That's your biggest issue. And you have to look at culprits that are the biggest ones that affect that. The number one effect is going to be your nervous system. The science shows it. HPA axis dysregulation. Now, what is that, doc? Hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. That's what HPA means. These are different aspects of where when you have chronic stress, basically meaning, and I don't want to make stress a bad thing, it's just you're not handling your stress well. You're not adapting well to your lifestyle, your environment. What it'll do is it'll elevate cortisol. Now, cortisol inhibits lipolysis, which means fat burning. Okay. And what it promotes more of is visceral fat storage. This isn't good. This leads to a whole bunch of cardiovascular issues and so many other things. Visceral fat is not a good thing. One of the biggest signs of visceral fat is you have a stomach that it's extending out and it's hard. It's not soft. It's not mushy. That means there's visceral fat underneath pushing out. And so I want you to understand that stressed brain hoards fat. A safe brain burns it. Now, coming back to what I was sharing earlier, the biggest culprit, number one, is a miscommunicated nervous system. This is chiropractic. This is where that comes in. It locks everything in first. Now, you may say, if you're a patient going and you've been trying, you've been struggling, but doc, I get adjusted. I've been getting adjusted. Why isn't it working? Well, it is working. The problem is there's other factors that are playing a role that's disrupting what's trying to be shifted here. So what does that mean? That chiropractic's not the end all be all. Again, you're thinking medical, right? I get a treatment, which chiropractic doesn't treat anything, but let's just go with those terms. You get an adjustment and you think, well, if I'm getting this, then this should happen because it's changing my neurology. But yeah, it's kind of like practicing meditation, being all calm, and then you just go right back to your normal thought process and reactions and so much more. You're not doing anything for yourself. At least with the chiropractic side is a little bit more potent because it helps you adapt at least to what you have going on and holding on stronger and helping you recover as best as possible. But the second thing is sleep. So people always ask me, what's the best thing you can do for your health? Well, one is chiropractic care because it controls everything. The second best thing you do is sleep. Figure out how to sleep better. Get an Oura ring, look at different things that you can do. We did a workshop on sleep last month. If you're interested, let us know. We can share you the recording. And it gets into, because sleep is the most crucial thing. And chiropractic allows for sleep to go deeper. That's why I say chiropractic first. Then when you get those two things down, then you look at mindfulness type practices, other factors to help you with that. What I've seen, I used to run a practice. I had my practice and we used to do a program where I just told people I'm going to help you. It was a weight loss program. It was just teaching them how to sleep. I kid you not. And when people got in and they found out it was just about sleep, I had some patients that were getting frustrated about that. And I said, just trust the process. Well, they did. Guess what? It worked. 3 months later, they couldn't believe they were losing weight. And I didn't care about the scale. I cared about the inches. And they were like, I'm actually slimming. Clothes aren't fitting as much. How is this working? Well, I said, well, you're under chiropractic care, number one, because I only let people in the program who are under chiropractic care. Because again, neurology first. Second, sleep. And this is going to help you. Now, why am I sharing all this? Because the better you sleep, the better you could go deeper into that other side of not in the fight or flight, but growth and development. And when you can do that, you're actually regulating your hormone system, especially calming and regulating the HPA axis more, which is actually then going to increase lipolysis, which is breaking down of fat. And now you're not in a state of stress as much anymore like you used to be. Big, big difference there. All right. So the big thing here, and this is for the men. All right. So I want to share with you for the men. I mean, I have one on women too, but for men, what happens is people will experience about anytime they go through stress, it's about a 60% rise in cortisol, pretty high. And this is where we want to make sure we're managing our stresses as best we can. Again, chiropractic, best thing you can do for biggest bang for your buck. Long term, short term, you name it. But for men and for women, because women need testosterone too. But if you want to have what I call a vitality budget, heat levels and stress. I want to be very clear about this. So this is mostly for gentlemen. This is mostly for the men, but women do need testosterone also. And like I said, this is going to be one of the most important slides for a man that you're going to be able to see. But ladies, guess what? We need some hormone balance here. So let's get into this a little bit. So your body will make hormones from the same raw materials. I want you to think of it just like a budget, running a financial budget when you're doing things. If you spend all your money on cortisol, which is known as the stress hormone, you really don't have nothing left for testosterone, which would be mostly for men, but for women, progesterone. This is what we call the cortisol steal. And you can't supplement your way out of spending problem in your nervous system. We have to stop the theft at the source. This is why we talked about earlier about working out, return on investment. What if you have a leak that you don't know of? The same thing happens here. Cortisol will mess these things up. And I've seen this with my own personal health too, because I produce just naturally higher levels of testosterone. There's pros and cons to that. But what I've also learned is I have high cortisol in my body, which is actually inhibiting the benefits of having high testosterone. So it competes with that because then my body's trying to keep up with the demands of my testosterone levels, but at the same token, then it's pulling to cortisol to try to keep it in balance. It's a very stressful thing, right? But once you, and I've gone through this in the past, and then when I started focusing on just, if I want to get better in shape, I just will focus on my cortisol levels. And next thing you know, my inflammation goes down. All of a sudden, my muscle mass will start to get more improved. My strength improves more. I get better in shape faster. And it's amazing what will happen just by doing these simple things. For men, you have to really understand, a lot of men now in today's world, especially 30, 40-year-old men, which is kind of sad, they have low T. That's why you're seeing so many more clinics out now with testosterone injections, or they do the pellets and all these different things. You have to get to your cortisol levels first. You got to regulate that. And how do we control cortisol? It's a stress response. Well, what makes you less stressed? Chiropractic care. Coming right back to the neurology. What helps you get that with next? Sleep. You do those two things, it's going to be a huge thing. Then you can work on other things, okay? But here's what happens. Here's some science behind this. This is called the steroid hormone cascade. I want to be really clear on this. Pregnenolone, which is known as the mother hormone, what ends up happening is stress forces the body to prioritize the survival pathway, which is going to be cortisol, over what is known as the vitality pathway, which is your sex hormones. That's why low libido is something that is very prominent in today's world now, and it's on the rise. I remember I started seeing huge trends in this in like 2015, 16, 17. This was with low testosterone levels, ED issues in men, women having low libido, and all these other different things. And it's one of those things that understanding that when we can shift our stress response, change around, and we can start focusing on getting it better in balance, we can raise testosterone levels a little bit higher. And for women, that's progesterone. We're going to talk a little about working out and recoveries and stuff like that. But you can't build a vitality hormone on a survival budget. You're just not going to be able to. You can't be in, your mind cannot focus on growth when everything, or not be in a state of growth when all you focus on is survival. It's just not going to happen. This is you know, I don't want to get too much in my coaching side of things, but this is why like poverty mindset individuals will always experience poverty. Growth mindset individuals, or growth or abundant mindsets, and whatever you want to call that in, will experience only that. It's because of what they focus on. So the same thing here. We can't have vitality in everything we do when we're on a survival. And so this is something that's going to play a huge role. And exercise plays a huge role in this. And there are types of exercise. I'll get into a little bit of that. I'll share that a little bit later to kind of break that down just a little bit for you, of the things that you can do to help in building up testosterone. Because like for men, if you're listening to this, go chop wood for 30 minutes and you'll boost testosterone by 49%. I mean, it's just simple things we can do. And exercise is one of the biggest. And I'll share a couple tidbits at the end on the help with that, because I want to get into some other things a little bit before we go into those kind of things. And don't worry, women, I got a slide coming for you guys, for y'all, when it comes to what to do with your cycle and working out and so much more. All right, let's get into this really quick. Brain GPS, why accuracy equals performance. All right, I want to get really clear with this. Have you ever noticed when you try to drive a car with GPS and it was 30 seconds behind, how well that driving experience is going to go? Aren't you going to be a little hesitant? You're probably going to be slow, maybe taking the wrong turns, right? Well, this is the same thing that happens when your spine is fixated. When you have a subluxation, miscommunication, your brain loses that live feed of where your joints are in space. We call this proprioception. This is what in neurology they call that. This, when your feed is blurry, your brain's going to make you move slower and weaker to protect you. An adjustment, though, reboots the GPS, giving your brain a more high definition map of your body. And what ends up happening is the speed limits are starting to be lifted. Now we can get into growth. Now we can expand. Now we can do more deeper things. In neurology, we call this the cerebellar cortical loop. And what that means is that the cerebellum is a part of the brain right behind the back of your skull. And it's basically all on movement. It picks up on everything proprioception. It picks up every single movement in the joint, everything in the body. It goes through all that. any movement based on spinal input. What adjustments do is they actually clear what's known as the sensory motor integration pathways. Sensory going in, motor firing out. So sensory goes to the brain, motor fires away. And what it does is allows for smoother and faster movement. Okay, so if you have smoother and faster movement, isn't that going to help you with walking and help you with workouts? If you play sports, it's going to help you be more congruent. If you like to do golf, whatever it is that you do, every facet of life, it's going to be smoother and faster movements. And that's going to help you be more effective. Because you have to understand, a brain that can't see the body won't let the body perform the way it needs to. And you have to understand, in life, some people say, well, I'm not an athlete. I don't work out much. You still are moving. You still walk. You still do all these things. If you don't have proper speed and proper efficiency and things moving the way they should, this leads to more wear and tear on the body, which leads to issues down the road. And this takes a long time before it shows up. That's why a lot of people, when I talk about arthritis in their spine, and they go, I think I have arthritis. That's why my pain's there. No. Because that took 7 to 15 years to show up on an x-ray. So if you didn't have pain for the last 7 to 15 years, but it was developing arthritis, and now all of a sudden it just hurts out of nowhere. No. You had issues there before. It just didn't get to that level. And so this is the importance of, we all have things that we're facing. We all have this thing called gravity that we have to deal with every time we're moving and walking and so forth. And this is going to allow you to improve power, so movement in life. If you are an athlete and you do work out, this allows you to improve performance and have a more deeper understanding of body positioning. Your form is a lot better. I noticed under chiropractic care, I didn't even have to think about form anymore. It just naturally happened. I would just be working out, and somebody would be like, let's say I had a patient or somebody, I was at the gym, or I knew a personal trainer, and I was showing something. And they're like, "You have really good form," and I'm like, I'm not even trying really. But it's just my body is so more body awareness to know where it is in space to perform in the proper way. You will do the same thing. Brain awareness. This is what we're doing from a chiropractic perspective. That is a game changer for your life. I know I'm hammering on the chiropractic, but it's just because chiropractic doesn't get enough love. Everybody just thinks it's just neck pain, back pain, and headaches. And once it's gone, you don't need it anymore. I'm trying to show you there's a whole nother world that I'm trying to invite you to. Let's talk about recovery, because this happens so much. I talk about recovery, and I talk about many different things of how it helps you recover. And a lot of people think that's not true. So when you're working out, recovery is going to be one of the most biggest and most crucial things that you want to focus on, okay? This is more important, in my opinion, than actually working out. Because you don't grow in the gym, you grow in the gap. If you keep working out and work out too much, you're not going to grow to the max of what you could. If you don't do enough, that's also an issue too. So you got to find that middle ground. So like for my lifestyle, what works really, really well for me, no more than 4 days a week of working out. That's a max for me. Usually I hit around 3, maybe 4. And then what I'll do though is I'll take 2 to 3 days, where I do like active recovery. Maybe I'll go for a 30, 45-minute walk. Maybe I'll go for a little hike that's not stressful. And then I'll always do 1 day a week where I do nothing and I let my body rest. And that has worked out very, very well for me. I've been doing that since I've had very similar things like that since I was 19. I would only work out 4 days a week. I'd do Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I'd have 3 rest days, work out 4 days a week. And I was in the shape that very, very good shape. So I want you to understand the gym is where you tear down the house. When you work out, you're tearing down the house. The gap between workouts is where the construction crew shows up. So if you walk out of a workout and immediately dive into a stressful day without resetting, well, your construction crew just never gets the memo to start building. And so what you end up doing is you stay in a state of catabolism. Sorry, messing that word up there. Basically tearing down. And so this is why people get skinny, fat, or injured. When we do neurotonal reset, this tells the construction crew to get to work immediately. So basically the science on this is that when you work out, you're stressing the body, you're stimulating the sympathetics, but then you want to pull back into the parasympathetics as quick as possible. This is where chiropractic is really powerful, because we create a better brake pedal system so you can pull back faster. And so when we can build some parasympathetic dominance, it's a game changer. And research shows this. They found that muscle protein synthesis and recovery are governed by the vagus nerve. This is about 75 to 85% of your brake pedal system, or the parasympathetics is by this. Chiropractic is the most powerful thing for the vagus nerve. It's vagal tone, and we do huge aspects with this. Chiropractic has been shown to increase heart rate variability in individuals, the number one indicator for recovery capacity. It's also a huge indicator of how well you can adapt to the stresses of life. And chiropractic is known to show better than anything out there long-term success with heart rate variability. So when you can stay in this state, you recover better with life. And this is not just working out. I know this whole topic is supposed to be around working out. I want to keep it there. But there's other things that's going to play a role with. Imagine if you had a stressful time with family, stressful thing going through life. This is going to help you recover through it a little bit, I don't want to say faster, but I would say more optimal, right? Or your recovery capacity to the fullest of your potential. The gym, again, when you work out, is the stimulus. Your nervous system is the response. If you don't get a response, you get no results. I want to really hammer that, okay? Now, I talked a little bit of testosterone. There is a difference when working out between men and women. And I want to really clarify this because a lot of times, and for those who are into the terminology of things, this is biological sex woman versus biological sex male. And so there's a different biological rhythm between men and women that you want to make sure you are working out towards and not working against yourself. And I want to be really clear. A lot of people don't think about this with working out. I mean, even just working out for men and women, we have different muscle fibers. And understanding that, your workout should be different. So let's get into this a little bit. So if you're a woman trying to train like a man, or a man ignoring your daily reset, you're fighting your own biology and you're making it harder for you to achieve the results of what you want to get to. So here's the difference. Men, they operate on what's known as a circadian rhythm. It's a 24-hour cycle of testosterone. Women operate on something called the infradian rhythm. Okay, this is a 28-day cycle. What does this mean? Well, the neurological load of a woman can handle changes every single week. Ignoring this leads to burnout and hormonal chaos. I want to be very clear about that. So I'm talking a little slower here just to really hammer this in. So understanding that is that every week you can handle changes, no problem whatsoever. Men, a little different. We're going to get deeper into this because I'm going to get into the male blueprint versus the female here in a second. But what I want to really hammer out this slide and this portion here is that equality doesn't mean sameness in the gym. You have to honor your rhythm to master your results. So you may say, okay, doc, what's these rhythms? Well, let's talk about the man's 24-hour clock, right? So they have something called the 24-hour blueprint, and this is maximizing your male engine. So men, listen in here. You got 24 hours. You want to optimize your hormonal levels at this. You want to have a great energy outputs. With this 24-hour clock, is actually going to show the peaks and valleys of different cortisol levels and testosterone and when to work on it, when not, when to take advantage of it, and all these different things, okay? We are literally built, our biology, I say we, men, we're built on a 24-hour hunt and reset cycle. And if you're not timing your training and your resets to this clock, you are fighting an uphill battle with your hormones, and you're creating more stress into the hormones, okay? So it's the testosterone for men, for the most part, is highest in the morning, right? That's when men usually have a window for peak output and intensity. You have to think about how humans have been trained for so long. Men would wake up in the mornings, they get ready, and they go out to hunt for food for the family or for the tribe. They all go and get food, right? As the day goes on, your resilience to stress actually will drop. If you are someone, especially a male, if you're doing high intensity training late at night and then struggling to sleep, you are crashing the system. I knew a guy, I worked with him, and he would work out 9 o'clock at night. He's like, my schedule only allows him to work out 9 o'clock at night. That's how long you work out, how many days you work out a week. It was 5 days a week. He's very good on his nutrition. He takes all this stuff. He didn't have a lot of muscle mass. I looked at him, I said, you need to figure out how to change your workout. He goes, I just can't. I said, well, then you're wasting your time working out. You're only stressing the body and you're making it worse. And he goes, well, I don't understand. I thought working out was good for you. Didn't matter when. I said, yeah, but there's certain hormones you have to follow by, certain blueprints you have to work with. And when he was able to shift it, he saw a huge change. Because if you do, what ends up happening, the reason why you don't sleep well and you're doing these high trainings at night is you're revving the system, you're crashing it. And that's what ends up happening is your cortisol is going to rise and you're and so much and more and overall, but you're also messing the whole thing up. With neurotonal reset, what you're doing is you're allowing your cortisol levels to drop in the morning like they're supposed to, and you let your testosterones rise even more. And then you can add to that mix. All right, so we call this, so here's some science behind this, and I want to really hammer this because, again, I love bringing the science to the table. So there's something for men, what we have is something called the pulsatile hormone release, okay? So testosterone is actually released in pulses, and again, it's through this pathway. You know, we talked about the HPA axis, right? Hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal. Well, there's one called the hypothalamic, pituitary, gonadal, which is APG axis, right? So what this does is stress will blunt these pulses. It shuts them off. It doesn't allow them to work as well. And this will affect our testosterone. That's why testosterone will drop as you get older in some way, shape, or form. It shouldn't be that way. That's what most people are seeing, especially earlier, right? Well, what did you know if that, a clear chiropractic speaking, there's actually a neurological path in the upper cervical spine where the brain sits. That's important. If that's imbalanced or that's not properly aligned, that will affect this pathway, which will lower your testosterone levels and not allow, and it'll increase stress on the same point. So what's interesting is there's something called the neuroendocrine pathways, which is neuro means nervous system, endocrine means hormone pathways. Women and men both have this. And chiropractic plays a massive, massive role in that. And so when you're getting adjusted, what it does, it'll allow the master glands to let your body produce the testosterone rather than more stress hormones. It calms it down so you can have more testosterone to be produced. It's a huge game changer in what it does. So long story short here, for a man's strength is a reflection of his hormonal rhythm. Stop fighting the clock, start mastering it. Work out more closer into the mornings if you can. If you can do early morning, that's great. You can do midday. I work out more midday. It works out better for me just physically. I noticed that my workouts are, I can push more harder in the mid-afternoon, mid-morning, at lunchtime roughly, is when I can really push my workouts. But those are just things to understand. So if you're male, these are things you want to look at. Try to work out early in the mornings. Okay. For just presentation purposes, when I do coaching for individuals, for when it comes to health and goals and things like that. Sometimes I'm working with a male. Sometimes I try to push. Maybe morning workouts may not be good for them because they have other things going on, and we have to work on those and address those first. So I understand it's not a perfect cookie cutter system, but for the most part, we're just keeping this for presentation purposes. You working out in the morning would be most beneficial for a man to do that. All right, let's get into women here. So you have the infradian rhythm. I'm trying to make sure I pronounce that correctly. So yours is not about the 24-hour clock. Yours is mastering the 28-day sympathy that you have. So this is going to be looking at your cycle, in other words. And so understanding this is going to really help you really thrive in your workouts. It's going to help with your stress response and so much more. All right. So one of the things here is, for all the ladies listening and watching this, have you ever had a week where you felt like a superhero in the gym, followed by a week where even a light jog felt like trekking through mud, like it was one of the hardest things to do? I want to clarify, you are not lazy and you didn't lose any gains. I want to be very clear about that. You're just simply just different biologically, totally different person every single week of the month. How fun is that? So it's different for you, and your workouts should follow that. You should have a difference when it comes to these things. Now, let me explain a little bit, though. So as we discussed, men are on a 24-hour cycle. Women have a second internal clock called the infradian rhythm, and this 28-day cycle governs your metabolism, your brain chemistry, and your stress threshold. I mean, literally, it's so even important to, like, for women, if you want to have, if you're in a relationship or married, from day 2 to day 12 on your cycle, have all the most important conversations of the month during that time frame, because it'll play a role. Your mind's in a different state that you can go into that. After those days, do not as much as possible, because you won't be fully capable to be there. That's how important. That's how much these hormones play a role on women. And so during your follicular phase, you are neurologically primed for intensity. You're ready to go. You're ready to take it on. You're ready to put all the energy into things. But during your luteal phase, this is the week right before. So we're talking day 21, 28. Right before your period, your resting heart rate rises. Your stress ceiling drops. If you try to push for like any PRs or do any high intensity workouts, during that time, your brain is going to perceive it as a threat. So instead of burning fat, your body's going to spike cortisol. And this is going to hold on to water. It's going to hold on to weight. You're not going to burn fat. And this puts in a survival mechanism. I hope that makes sense. And so you want to understand the aspects of each week of what to do. It doesn't mean you just change your workouts. You still work out, but just don't push so hard. Give your body a chance just to add a little bit, right? Because here's the science. There's something called the progesterone vagus connection. This is huge. Again, chiropractic plays a huge role. We'll talk about that. But in the luteal phase, higher levels of progesterone naturally will stimulate the amygdala. This is the part of the brain that's your stress response. It's like your fear and anxiety and worry center. This means your nervous system is basically on alert already. And research has found in functional neurology shows that women are more prone to autonomic dysregulation during this phase. It means that when you're in that luteal phase, it's easy to get more dysregulated. This is mentally, emotionally, and so much more. Notice I said day 2 to day 12 when it comes to having important conversations with your spouse. There's a reason behind that. Here's just a little something talking about from a workout perspective. Don't want to do it outside that realm. You don't want to do it definitely in the luteal phase. And chiropractic comes in as a secret weapon for all of this, especially for women, because when adjusting the spine and getting that nervous system clear, what ends up happening is we keep that vagus nerve active and we keep the tone at where it needs to. And this is going to buffer that stress response, which will allow you to maintain your fitness without crashing your hormones. That's the huge difference when it comes to working out. And not many people talk about this. And I thought this was critical. I wanted to share this. There's other things that women should do versus men shouldn't do. Men should have workout. Men can need more longer rests in between their workouts. What I mean by rest is like if you do an exertion workout or whatever it is that you're working out to do, you need in the break between sets, you need a longer set. Women can take shorter ones because they have different muscle fibers, so they are more conditionally based versus versus men we don't have as much as the conditioning muscles, and it's more because of neurologically more than anything else why that is. But that's one of the big things that happen there. Understanding there's a lot of differences between men and women that we have to address in different ways. So I want you to understand, women, stop trying to train like a man. You're not supposed to. That's not how you're designed to. We are genetically different, a lot of different factors that play a role in this. When you work with your cycle instead of against it, you are going to stop the burnout and start the breakthrough. I think this is one of many different things of where we see women can get more stressed. They can take more stress. They can handle more stress. Again, women are more evolved than men are neurologically in so many ways. And so you can handle things differently. You can access all these different things. But you want to be in sync with your natural cycle. You're very connected to the moon. 28 days, it kind of connects a little bit. I think the moon's on a 29-day cycle. But anyhow. But the point I'm trying to bring up is you're connected to that. And this is where you want to make sure you're doing certain workouts in that process. So when it comes to that luteal phase, getting into the second half, getting close to the menses, what you want to do is you just want to dial it back, get more into just a movement, a routine, a better flow, not really stress. And then 2 weeks out of the month, you can really push yourself. In that follicular phase, you're good. You're ready. Day 2, day 12, you're solid. Okay? Once you get ovulation, you're switching over. Take it easy. Relax a little bit. Don't push yourself so much. Still work out. Still do your stuff. But just don't train as heavy. You have to follow that rhythm and flow. You can do it the other way you want, but I'm just telling you neurologically that's how that works. Just like men, we have a 24-hour clock. Testosterone is high in the mornings. That's the best time to work out. You get the best results usually. So I want to be really clear on that. I just got a couple more things I want to tie into a little bit here to get into to wrap things up here. But the co-regulation, the parent-athlete connection, this is huge. Research has shown the nervous system is very contagious. I understand it's very, very, I'll share some science in a minute here. But many of you are here to perform better in the gym, right? You wanted to learn something new about something or what you can do to be better in your workouts, performance, and so much. But your nervous system doesn't stay at the squat rack. It follows you home to your kitchen with your kids and so much more. I want to be really clear on that. There's a biological phenomenon called co-regulation. A child's developing nervous system mirrors your parents. Okay, so if you're a parent, you want to be the best parent you can for your kiddos, get your nervous system in check. It's going to be big. And trust me, this is the hardest for as a parent myself. This is something I have to keep reminding myself because I know when I'm not in a good state and I come home or I'm around my kids and let's say I'm just being annoyed, some things are getting to me. I'm a parent, I'm a human, I go through these things too. And my kids just start adding up, right? Or when I don't want them to do something, I'm like, oh, just kidding. I just want them to be this way just for now because I just need this. Well, I'm not going to get it because kids pick up on it. It's contagious. And I'll share some science in a second on how that works. But if you're training in a state of high cortisol and never resetting, you are bringing that vibration of stress in your home. I want to be clear on that. And when you're optimizing your tone through chiropractic, you become an anchor. This is why I became a family chiropractor, because I saw the difference in families when they were all under care and how they all manage stress and how they all adapt versus not. And so when you're a regulated parent, you can be calm during a stormy child. And you can just be present. You can regulate them. This is where the power of a mother, and I say mother, men, dads can do this too, but and I'm not saying you can't. I don't want to take it away from dads. But I'm just saying a mom, child's really upset. They can just be there in the moment. They can just embrace them and they can breathe, and the mom can just keep her nervous system regulated. And then eventually the child will just do that. There's a lot of science in this. And I'll share just a couple of them. One of them is called the mirror neurons. And these are these brain cells that fire when we both act and we observe. That's why if you see someone yawning, you yawn. But if a parent's nervous system is in survival mode, the child brain perceives the threat environment. So they think there's a threat always. And here's the interesting thing about this. That they've done studies on this. When I was at my old practice, we had a horse farm there, a horse area near us, a horse therapy. And what I would recommend is for my autistic, overstimulated, very dysregulated kiddos, I would refer them to go and get some therapy there. They've done studies where they've seen like a kid who had, he was autistic and he would have these seizures and they would just come out of nowhere and he just couldn't control it. So someone heard about what I'm just sharing with you, this co-regulation, this mirror neurons, all these different things. So there was these 4 horses and the horse, they had the kid laying on the middle. And the 4 horses were just standing there, and they knew something was different because animals are so sensitive to this stuff, and especially horses. And they started to, what they found, they were monitoring the horses, and they noticed that the horses picked up on it. They started slowing down their breath. They slowed down their heart rate, and they all came and relaxed. And within a very short period of time, the kids' seizures were starting to diminish to where they stopped. That's how powerful this is. Now, I can share something else with you, another science, that they found out that if you're around an individual who's very high in stress, right? Because I'm going to share something here that's very important. If you're a parent, listen in. They found out that if you're around someone if you're very stressed out, or the other person who you're with is very stressed out, what ends up happening is they found that cortisol levels in that person are going to be high. And somehow they get transferred over to the other person and they take in that cortisol also and it affects them. This is pure neuroscience right now. This stuff was considered woo-woo many years ago. Thousands of years ago, they talked about stuff like this. Didn't say exactly cortisol, but they said the energy and state of an individual, where they are, who you were with, it will always play a role. This is where business, they talk about law of association. These are some variables that are true in a lot of ways. Well, we have the science now in neuroscience to prove that. So your cortisol levels will go up because if you're stressed around somebody who's stressed, unless you can balance yourself. So what am I trying to share as a parent? The greatest gift you can give your child is your own regulated nervous system. The greatest gift you can give is a regulated nervous system. Make sure you're always working out to keep your nervous system in the state. If you're a woman, work out with your cycle. If you're a man, work out in the morning. This is the importance of this. This is what's going to allow you to be more neurologically efficient, more neurologically toned, more optimal. It's a game changer, right? I really want to hammer that because this next one I'm going to share is when you're getting older, you don't lose muscle mass to a certain degree. What you end up doing is you're losing your neurology because we're not taking care of it. And this plays a huge role in a lot of different things. So I want you to understand that your nervous system You're not getting old in any way. You're just kind of losing these connections. Because here's the thing. How many times you've heard it, I'm just getting old, my joints are supposed to ache, right? How many people have heard that? We've all been lied to about this, but we've all heard it, but you've been lied to. We don't lose muscle and balance simply because of birthdays. We lose them because of neurological decay. I want to be very clear on that. If your brain stops receiving high quality data from the spine, it prunes the connections to your muscles. It minimizes that. And this is why what you had a slight little issue years ago now becomes a bigger issue. In your balance, you lose balance, you get stiff, you're not as flexible, it's not muscle weakness at all, guys. It's data weakness. I hope from this whole workshop you got that. Because chiropractic care is going to keep your brain young, which allows the data lines to stay open, which allows you to be more structurally stronger, more resilient, and you can handle stresses in life so much more. There's science behind this. You don't have to believe anything I say. Toxicity and use-dependent cortical reorganization. This was a study. And what they talked about is it said that if the brain doesn't receive proper proprioceptive input, which is movement data, it reassigns that area of the brain to something else. Your brain is all about being efficient. So what you don't lose is eventually going to say, hey, we don't need that. Let me just be really clear here. Not only nerves are going to change and get reorganized and redirected, but even your capillaries will minimize in a certain tissue because you're not putting demand on it. So the brain says, hey, we're not going to put that energy in anymore. Let's go take that to other areas where we have to focus on because this is where it's leading us to. So I want you to understand, you don't stop moving because you grow old. You grow old because your brain stops seeing your body. And I want to be very clear. This is where chiropractic, again, longevity. Research has shown that, hey, the first sign of loss of longevity is sarcopenia, which means loss of muscle fibers. Now, means you're losing muscle mass in many ways. And so we're talking about how the nervous system is what dictates that. So if you can make sure you're keeping your nervous system clear and functioning better, and you keep your muscle mass there, will that play a role in longevity? Absolutely. It's one of the biggest factors. You can go Google this right now. Don't believe me. Google it. I want to get a couple more things here. So we got the biohacking versus the biologic. I love this one. I want you to understand that you can buy the best supplements and massage guns and all these tracking devices now. And we're getting into so much more things and it's all great. But a lot of people are doing this and they still feel stuck. Like they have all the Oura rings. They're using the Apple Watch. They use these sensors, that sensor, the posture sensor. They do all these different things, and it's just not helping them. They still feel stuck in some way. So they think it's this new thing. I got to do this. I got to do a pericardial cleanse. I got to do a detox. I got to do this. I need to do this. Oh, I just got to get back to doing this again. And it's always doing and not understanding. Biohacking is very popular, especially now in 2026, and it's only going to continue to get more and more, especially with AI. But I want you to understand, you can't hack a blown circuit. If there's no functioning going to a nerve and area that's there, it's not going to work. If you think of your spine as a main breaker box for your house, I want you to understand, if you can change all the light bulbs you want, supplement, all the hacking, all that. But if the master switch is tripped, subluxation, the power won't flow. Your chiropractic is the manual reset for that master switch so all the other healthy habits can work. It helps everything else work better. That's why I call it a maximizer. And this is what can help you maximize your life. And it's very simple. We call it the vertebral subluxation complex. Big word, fancy word, I know. VSC, just think of it that way. But it's a physical, actual misalignment that creates a biochemical stress response. An adjustment creates a massive neurological pulse that resets that autonomic nervous system that allows your body to function better. So remember, you can't build a 2026 body on a 1990 circuit breaker. You got to update the software. And that's what chiropractic is doing. If you're a patient, you're already getting that. You're already maximizing that. And you can see, imagine a kid getting adjusted, an infant, for 20, 30 years straight. Imagine how their body's going to be functioning. It'll be vastly different than you can ever imagine. It's just powerful. All right, what I want to get into next is I want to get into a couple more things here before we wrap up. One of the things here is when we look at neurotonal reset and the type of workout, the first thing you have to do is you got to wake up your GPS's brain. Okay, so 85% activation of his brain's GPS, which is when you do this, it's going to enhance your performance and focus. Very, very huge before even working out. So here's what I want you to do. All right, I want you to stand up real quick. Okay, we're just going to prime your brain for movement. That's all we're doing here. Now, before you touch a weight, when you're going to work out, you need to wake up your vestibular system. Okay, so your balance, coordination, hand-eye, all these different things, right? So you keep your head still, and you're going to put your eyes on your thumbs, and you're going to look at them, look at your thumb, and you're going to move in an H pattern. You know, if you've been to an eye exam before, they track your eyes, and you just do it in H pattern. Okay, so the middle is the middle of the eye. You go to the right, then you come to the end of the H, and you go up, down, and then you come back to the middle, go back to the other side, up and down. Now, what I want you to do, after you do that, now move your head while keeping your eyes on the thumb. All right, so now you're going to tilt your head to the right, you're going to tilt your head to the left, you're going to look up, you're going to look down, you're going to rotate right, you're going to rotate left, and you're going to keep your eyes looking at your thumb. This is going to tell your brain exactly where you are in space, which is actually going to increase your stability and your power. All right. What we're doing with this exercise, and you can sit down if you like, what we're doing with this exercise is you're allowing what's known as your VOR, your vestibular ocular reflex. When the eyes and the neck move in sync, it stabilizes the brain's inner map. And what it will do is it actually reduces the risk of injury. It's pretty powerful. So when you clear the vision, the strength follows. That's number one. So imagine 85% of activation is the brain GPS, and we just did that. Now, what I want you to do next is this is going to be part of your closing the stress loop, right? So when you get done from the gym, you just were in war, okay? You got to let your body calm down. All right, so what you can do at the end of your workout, that's why people do a cool down, but I added some breath work into this. So I want you can sit and do this. Because the moment your last set's over, your goal is to flip that switch from stimulation of stress. You want to switch it back now into healing as fast as you can. This is where neurotonal resets come in really well. So what I want you to do is you're going to take a deep breath in through the nose for 4 seconds, 4 count, and you're going to exhale 8. And you're going to do a slight hum. All right, I'll get into all this, why this works. What this is going to do is going to tell your brain the battle is over. This will stop that cortisol steal. And it's going to start building process before you even hit the shower. It's going to allow the building to start happening. We're shifting your neurology. We're using this as an influence. What ends up happening is first of all, when you breathe longer out than you do in, when you inhale shorter than you exhale longer, you stimulate a lot of that vagus nerve, especially at the hiatus of the diaphragm. And so what those will do is it signals the brainstem to down-regulate your sympathetic or that gas pedal nervous system and up-regulate recovery. The humming is even important also. So there's a dual effect here. The inhale 4 is going to, again, and then you exhale longer, 6 seconds, 8 seconds, 8 count, 6 count, don't matter. But it's longer, is going to stimulate the parasympathetic. When you hum, you're actually stimulating the vagus nerve in the throat. So humming, especially deep hum, not up at the mouth, you want to feel the hum in your throat. So it's like, and you can tell the tone of my hum's higher than the lower part where it's So when I hum down lower, I put my hand on my throat and I hum and I can feel the vibration a lot stronger there. So you want to get there and that's going to stimulate this parasympathetic. You don't have to do it, just do it for a couple minutes. Just help your body reset, 2, 3, 4 minutes. That's all you need. And you can do a cool down. If you do cool downs after a workout, do the breath work with it. Because when the workout ends, when the breath slows down. I love that. And I want you to, I love that. I was taking a quote and I was like, I want to put a quote for this. And that's what I put there. And it's really powerful. It really is. When the breath when it calms down, that's when the workout ends. Now, I know you've been hearing me talk about this, but this is step 3, and this is the ultimate performance reset, okay? This is the master reset you can't do at home. A lot of people say, well, doc, sounds like you're making me independent on chiropractic. Well, unfortunately, we can't do an adjustment on ourselves. You just can't. It'd be $1 billion, trillion-dollar industry. You just can't do it. I see a chiropractor once a week. I've been doing this for 24 years. I saw much more than once a week for almost half of that. But because I understand I can't check my nervous system to make sure that it's optimally at the highest function and to give it the most optimal function possible, right? A specific chiropractic adjustment reboots your prefrontal cortex. That's the brain behind the forehead. part of their brain behind the forehead. What this is, it's like hitting refresh on a frozen computer. This is research that has shown that a 24% increase in leg strength after one adjustment because we cleared the interference. This is the cornerstone of what neurotonal reset's all about. There was research done by Dr. Burnett Murphy, and what she showed is that one adjustment improved sensory motor integration, the brain's ability to take in sensory input. I call this brain awareness, and produce an accurate motor response by up to 20%. What it ends up doing is an adjustment actually turns the lights back on in your brain, turns the lights back on in the body, and optimizes function. Every adjustment helps the chances of the body to heal, to remove another layer to heal more. You have to understand you have there's infinite amount of layers that we've layered on ourselves and conditioned on ourselves since we were young. Neurologically, we're just going to help increase to help you function and heal at the highest level possible at that time. And every adjustment is going to add to that. And this is going to help you in every aspect of what you do. And it's going to help you function just not as an athlete or in your workouts and your performance. It's also mentally, it's also hormonally, it's also stress response, cortisol, testosterone, progesterone, all these different things. This is what true vitalism is all about. You make an adjustment, we're not treating anything, but yet it affects the whole entire system. That's true vitalism. And that is where the difference is between an allopathic medical process to chiropractic. And unfortunately, if you ever hear a chiropractor say, oh, I can help you with neck pain, I'll adjust this area and it's going to help you with your neck pain. No, that's not chiropractic. That's treatment. That's a medical term. It's a medical process. That is not chiropractic. When I make an adjustment, I am not looking at saying, well, if this adjustment can help with their back pain or their neck pain or headaches or the kid with autism or ADHD or sensory issue or a kid who's bedwetting or has a colic or acid or active or silent reflux. No, there's no adjustment that does that. Like sometimes, like when I work with a kid who has acid reflux, I'll tell the parent this T6 is usually one of the nerves that control the stomach. It's less than 10% of the time. Most of the time, it's going to be the mechanisms of the body. I'm going to focus on those, and it's going to help with that. And sometimes I don't like that because I want you to adjust that area. I'm focusing on the overall system, trying to get the nervous system regulated overall. When I do that, this will take care of that. 9 out of 10 times it does. And then there's that one time where there may be other factors that are playing a role. Notice that you thought, I know when I say the story, they're like, oh, you were going to go adjust that T6. No, I wasn't. I just still didn't touch that T6. There's other factors playing a role that we have to look at in the environment to help with this. Because once you clear the nervous system, if there's still things showing on, then we know we got your nervous system to a better state of response and healing. And now we have to go and say, well, what environmentally that we have to look at to help you? Number one is sleep. And then we work on everything else from there. But it's the most potent thing you can do for your health, longevity, because chiropractic is truly an investment into the long term. Patients who I had under care my longest patient I had in my career was 13 years. She stayed around for 13 years, never missed, came weekly, because she understood that where she was before and all the changes happened in her health. And she looked at me and said, how do I maintain that? I said, well, maintenance is not a proper term. I'll help you be as optimal as you possibly can. We'll clear the nervous system. All you're doing is you're coming in, I'm checking the nervous system. I'm not going to say, well, I need to adjust you for every week because this is what I need to do. No, I'm checking to see if you need an adjustment. If you need an adjustment, I will make the adjustment. And that's what we did. And the level of energy, the level of shifts in those 13 years, she goes, this has been the biggest game changer in every aspect of my life, physically, chemically, mental, emotionally, spiritually. She goes, it's just been a game changer, and I can't believe what you do did that. And I said, well, because you already had it in you. Your body wants to thrive. It wants to be healing, wants to be healthy, and so much more. So this is where the power of this kind of stuff comes in. If you made it this far, I want to share some with you really quick. You don't have to take my word for it, but there's some of the greatest legends of all time. There's actually a trend, or there's, success leaves clues. And one of the clues I've seen with studying legends is they all got chiropractic care. We'll say Tom Brady. He's the best quarterback to ever play in the NFL. 7 Super Bowls. He's known all the records he has and so much more. Here's what he says. Chiropractic makes you feel so much better. As long as I see a chiropractor, I feel like I'm one step ahead of the game. Pretty powerful there. Michael Jordan, best basketball player of all time. I didn't know how much I could improve until I started seeing a chiropractor. Since I've been in chiropractic, I've improved by leaps and bounds, both mentally and physically. I wonder if that would ever have hindered him. Aaron Rodgers, kind of quote out here, but his dad's a chiropractor. And he said, performing at my best is important to me and should be to everyone. I'm blessed that my dad's a chiropractor, getting adjusted regularly along with practicing other good health habits that my mom helped me to has helped him in his performance. Usain Bolt saw a chiropractor regularly. He actually had scoliosis, got it corrected. And I'm always like, if you didn't see a chiropractor, would you ever seen Usain Bolt break the records that he did? No, we wouldn't have. The power of chiropractic beyond what you can ever imagine. Let's hear some stories we had. Mike here. He started chiropractic care with me, and what he noticed that he was doing more in his 50s than he could do in his 30s. When it was cutting wood, hiking, go for a run, working out, or anything physically, he's seen more strength, better conditioning, and less time to recover. These things we talked about. Ayla, same thing. She said the techniques we use and so much more. She's been to chiropractors for 5 years. We started working on her, and the aspect of what she can do, optimal function, to strengthen her workouts, weight loss, you name all those different things. She started to see changes hugely in the process as we regulated this nervous system. Again, it took time. Even though she's already been under chiropractic care for a while, it still took some time to make these changes as we're doing a different approach. But at the same token, when we were doing neuro-focused type chiropractic care, she noticed these huge changes for herself. And then for Greg, same thing here. He had he was in his 50s, big cyclist. He wanted to get into cycling again. He couldn't because of a knee issue and a back issue. Long story short, when the pain went away, I told him after a couple months, I said, all right, let's start pushing yourself a little bit. Let's get back on the bike. Let me know what your limits are. Let's start working on things. And what he noticed as what he couldn't achieve in his 30s, he did in his 50s. And he said chiropractic allows him to get back into cycling. He got back into hockey. And he even said all the guys that are around him and they play, he's like, I'm outperforming them. I'm recovering. I'm less sore. I have less aches than they do. And I'm noticing my body just works at a different level than they. So that's the power of what chiropractic can do. And I hope that I hammered that message with you. If you're not a patient, definitely check us out. If you have questions, you want to book an examination and to see exactly what's going on, how we can help, and so much more, you can do that by texting us at 865-214-7438. Email us at info@wellnesspath.com, wellnesspathchiro.com, or you can send us a DM at wellnesspathchiro. We're here to support every step of the way. I hope you enjoyed this. Any questions you have, please let me know. I can help with anything you have. Email it over to us. If you're a patient, have a question, let's chat about it on the next visit. Appreciate you all taking the time. Until next time, we'll talk to you guys next month.